Thank you, Arvind, for the kind introduction. Hi, everyone. As you all know that we are conducting these sessions, two sessions for FMG graduates for important images in pathology. So in the first session, what I'll be covering today is the images in hematology, whereas in the next session, we will be covering the images in general pathology and systemic pathology. So why I specifically took this think images students, because you all must have noticed that in the past 2 years, the exam pattern has completely changed. Now we have a lot of images from general, systemic, or from other subjects as well, even in the FMG exams, right? So we have to focus and you should know how to identify the various images, correct? So that is why it is important for us to understand all these images and how to identify the various cells, right? But students, if you're unable to identify or see the images or make the diagnosis just on the basis of images, do not get paranoid, because we have seen that in 80 to 90% of questions, even if you don't know how to identify that particular cell or that particular image, but then also you will be able to solve the question just on the basis of clinical pathologic history which is there, right? For that, what is important is to make our basic concepts very, very nicely, right? So please focus on your basics. And even for FMG graduates, it is important to study in a very, very integrated manner. You have to correlate pathology with other subjects like medicine or surgery, etc. Correct? So without wasting any more time, I will quickly start with the images of hematology. I will try to cover all the images which are asked in the MCQ exams and which will help you to solve the questions, correct? Few things which I would like to tell you beforehand only. One, if you have any queries, I will be answering them at the end of the session. So you can keep your queries handy and we will discuss them at the end of the session. Secondly, you will get a PDF of all these images on your mail by tomorrow or day after. So do not get haywire about it, right? So students, quickly, let's start with the images. And yes, before I start with the hematology images, I would like to tell you a very, very important thing, which is very important for us doctors, that is the eye sees what the mind knows, right? So as a pathologist, if my mind does not know that what to look for in a slide, if my mind does not know what are the differential diagnoses for that particular patient, I would not be able to diagnose those, see those things, right? So it's very important for us to see these slides carefully, correct? So let's start with a very, very basic thing, students, that is, how do you identify the various cells on a peripheral smear? So this image, you all can appreciate the RBCs, WBCs, and the platelets. In hematology, the basic investigation which a pathologist orders, that is a peripheral smear. And the good part about this investigation is it's a very cheap investigation, right? So if we are suspecting any hematological disorder, we immediately tell the technician to put a peripheral smear, right? What will you see in a normal peripheral smear? Let's identify the various types of cells. That's a very, very basic thing, because if you know the normal, then only we will be able to identify the abnormalities, right? So I hope all of you can appreciate in this peripheral smear, these cells in the background, these are the RBCs which are there, right? The RBCs are characterized by a central one-third pallor, right? Central one-third pallor we all can see. Then students, the other cells which I can see, this cell which we see here, which is marked as D, that's a eosinophil, right? How do we identify a eosinophil? It has brick red granules, as you can see in this image, students. These are the brick red granules and a bilobed nucleus. There are two nucleus in a eosinophil, right? Here, this cell which I can see, that's a basophil, right? What is the characteristic feature of a basophil? What is the characteristic feature of a basophil is there are dark blue granules which obscure the entire nucleus, correct? These granules will obscure the entire nucleus, right? Then students, this cell which I see here is a lymphocyte. How do I identify a lymphocyte? You can see there are no granules. So two cells which are without a granule are the lymphocyte and a monocyte, right? In lymphocyte, there are no lobes in the nucleus. So there is a round nucleus, as you can see in this image, and there are no granules in the cytoplasm. Then we have a monocyte. It's the largest cell in the blood, right? And a very important point to note here is that it has a kidney-shaped nucleus. We can identify a kidney-shaped nucleus, right? Lastly, we have this cell, which is a neutrophil. Neutrophil has got approximately 2 to 5 lobes, right? How do we identify neutrophil? 2 to 5 lobes, and there are granules in the cytoplasm, right? Lastly, another thing which I see on the smear is a platelets, right? The platelets, they are small, very, very small particles, bluish colored particles, which will be seen, right? So this is a normal peripheral smear, which we see, which will show RBCs, WBCs, and platelets. Now, in today's session, what we will be seeing is if there is any abnormality in the RBC, WBC, or the platelets, you will be able to see it on the peripheral smear, right? So a very basic question which can be asked in your exam and which I would like to ask you here is that what is the stain which we use for a peripheral smear? Which stain do we use? We use the Romanowski stains. So certain labs use the Leishman stain, whereas other labs use the Giemsa stain. So either Leishman or Giemsa, any of these stains is used in our laboratory, in our labs for peripheral smear staining. Correct? That's a very basic question which can be asked. Now I know you know the basic thing of how to identify a peripheral smear. Let's go on to the next image. This image shows a bone marrow aspirate, right? This is a normal bone marrow aspirate. I don't think at your level you will be given a lot of bone marrow aspirates in the to diagnose, because that's a little tough. That's a PG level thing. But as a student, you should know how does a normal bone marrow aspirate looks like. It looks like this. You all know that bone marrow contains various cells in various stages of maturation. Like we have erythroid precursors, myeloid precursors, and megakaryocytic precursors, right? So what I will see on this aspirate, I will see different cells in various stages of maturation, correct? Plus, students, the only thing which they can ask you from this is what is the normal myeloid to erythroid ratio, right? You have the myeloid cells, you have the erythroid cells. What is the normal ratio of myeloid to erythroid cells? It is approximately 3:1. Remember that, correct? That's a normal BMA. In this image, what I see is a normal bone marrow biopsy, right? Bone marrow biopsy. Here I can see this focus shows the cellular focus, the various cells, right? The RBCs, WBCs, platelets. Here, what I see is the fat. This is basically fat, right? So lipid or fat, you all know, even for a lipoma, if you want to diagnose, it appears as a vacuole, correct? Then these pinkish thing which I see here, this is a bony trabeculae, correct? So bone marrow contains fat. So you will see cells, you will see fat, and you will see bony trabeculae. These are the three basic things which we use for hematology: the peripheral smear, the bone marrow aspirate, and the bone marrow biopsy, right? With this basic knowledge, now let us move to the various RBC abnormalities which we see on the peripheral smear, red blood cell abnormalities, very important. So in this image, students, what I can see is this RBC. Do you think this RBC is normal? No. I told you that RBC has got a central 1/3 pallor, but this RBC does not have any pallor, right? So that means there is some abnormality here. So we say that this is a spherocyte. It's a smaller cell with no central pallor. So if you see such a cell in the exam, the answer is going to be a spherocyte. Now the examiner will ask you that spherocytes are seen in which all conditions? In which all conditions do we see spherocytes? The answers are hereditary spherocytosis, autoimmune hemolytic anemia, burns, or blood transfusion reactions, right? These are the 4 DDs for spherocytes on a peripheral smear, correct? So students, in the MCQ exam, if you get a clinico-pathologic question, say a 5-year-old male with hepatosplenomegaly, the peripheral smear shows spherocytes, the osmotic fragility test is positive. The moment you read peripheral smear shows spherocytes, then you start thinking of these 4 conditions, right? These are the 4 conditions in which we see spherocytes, right? And then what we do is, because the examiner has stated that the osmotic fragility test is positive, we come to a diagnosis of hereditary spherocytosis, right? So these are the kinds of questions which are asked in the MCQ exams these days, which involve the images. So you will be able to identify the spherocytes on the smear. There is no central pallor. Next, in this image, students, can you see that this RBC which I'm seeing, it appears that somebody has gone and bitten this RBC, right? It looks like teeth marks, correct? That is why we call this cell as a bite cell. This is called as a bite cell because it appears that somebody has bitten this RBC, right? And in the inset, what we can see are something which are called as Heinz bodies, right? They are basically precipitates of hemoglobin which are seen. Now, these bite cells and Heinz bodies, both these things are a characteristic feature of G6PD deficiency. In which hemolytic anemia will you see bite cells and Heinz bodies? G6PD deficiency, correct? Now, important point to take home from here is that Heinz bodies are, they cannot be visualized by Romanowski stain. They are visualized by supravital stain. These Heinz bodies are visualized by supravital stains. We will go to supravital stains in some time when I show you these slides. Do not worry, correct? So these 2 things, they are seen in G6PD deficiency. Okay, in this peripheral smear, what can we see? The green mark thing which I see here, can you see that these cells have got a sickle-like shape, right? So the moment a pathologist sees that some shape like this is appearing, it's a very characteristic shape, I start suspecting in my mind that this patient can have sickle cell anemia, right? So these sickle-shaped things which we see the shape is like that of a sickle. These are sickle cells and they are a characteristic feature of sickle cell anemia. That's a very, very straightforward thing which we can easily diagnose. And there is no other DD for sickle cell anemia, correct? So we have done 3 things till now: spherocytes, bite cells and Heinz bodies, and sickle cells, right? Now, let me tell you a few words for the few keywords for the MCQ exams, how to solve a clinico-pathological question if my patient has hereditary spherocytosis or G6PD deficiency or sickle cell anemia, right? Now, remember one thing, if my patient has G6PD deficiency, the history is going to be that of a male more commonly as compared to females, because it is an X-linked recessive disorder. Whereas both the other 2 disorders, spherocytosis as well as sickle cell anemia, are occurs equally in both of them, correct? Then students, what is important in the history as a keyword is in G6PD deficiency, there can be given a history of any infection, chronic infection, or drugs. Like you all know that G6PD deficiency gets precipitated because of certain drugs like anti-malarial drugs, primaquine, chloroquine, right? Also, there can be a history of an African patient who consumes fava beans. These are kind of French beans which we have, correct? So that history can be given in the MCQ exams. Please focus on that. For sickle cell anemia, the different thing in the history can be that of history of any crisis. You all know sickle cell anemia patient develops vaso-occlusive crisis, right? So there can be a history of bone pains, or there can be a history of lung chest pains, right? There can be a history of fractures. So please look for that history. A child, an African child with such a history, peripheral smear showing sickle cells, think about sickle cell anemia, correct? Next, students, what are the special tests which we use for all these conditions? For spherocytosis, in the MCQ exam, it can be given. The osmotic fragility test can be positive. For G6PD deficiency, there can be Bite cells or Heinz bodies. And methemoglobin reduction test is a special test which is there. And for sickle cell anemia, we do 3 tests: sickling test, electrophoresis, and high performance liquid chromatography. I'm going to show you a picture of how the electrophoresis looks like and HPLC looks like in some time. Correct? So this is how we can differentiate all these 3 types of anemias on the in the clinico-pathologic question. Next, in this peripheral smear, can you see these cells which are there? These are actually target cells. They look like targets. You all have played that game of darts in your childhood. So in that game, we have a target which is there. Why is this cell called as a target cell? Because the cell looks like that particular target, right? Now, these target cells, when we see, they are seen in which all conditions? They are seen in thalassemia. So the first DD which a pathologist makes is thalassemia. The second is liver disease, and the third is megaloblastic anemia, correct? But most commonly in the MCQ exam, it is going to be thalassemia if it is given target cells, right? Most likely, you have to correlate it with the history, right? Next, in this image, what I see is, can you see that in this RBC, there are certain bluish dots which are seen in the RBC? What are these bluish dots? This is called as basophilic stippling. So in pathology, we use 2 terms very frequently. One is basophilic and one is eosinophilic. That's a very basic thing. That's why I'm telling you here. Basophilic means blue. So B for basophilic, B for blue. So what we see bluish in color, that is basophilic, and eosinophilic is pinkish in color, right? Now you understand why is this stippling called as basophilic stippling? Because we have bluish granules in the nucleus, in the cell, right? And this basophilic stippling is seen in which all conditions? It is a characteristic feature of either lead poisoning or thalassemia, right? The first DD which we will make is lead poisoning, and the second is thalassemia, right? Whereas this cell which I see here is called as a teardrop cell. Can you appreciate that this is of the shape of a tear, right? That's why it is called as a teardrop cell. You know, students, we pathologists, we need to have a very, very good observation, right? So when we observe a slide, we start imagining a lot of things. So when I see this slide, when I observe closely, I feel that it looks like a teardrop. So I name it as a teardrop cell, right? Now, these teardrop cells are a characteristic feature of myelofibrosis. Students, 2020 December FMG exam, this question was asked. The image of a teardrop cell was given, and they had asked you, this cell is seen in which condition? The answer to that was myelofibrosis. This was this year's, FMG 2020 exam question, correct? So that is why it's very important to focus on the various images, right? So teardrop cells in myelofibrosis, basophilic stippling in thalassemia or lead poisoning, correct? Next. So I just told you that we have target cells which we see in thalassemia. So this table gives you a short summary of how to differentiate between various types of thalassemias, or in the exam, when you get a clinico-pathologic history, what are the keywords to look for if the answer is going to be thalassemia, right? Now, thalassemia, beta thalassemia is of 3 types: major, intermediate, minor, right? Beta thalassemia major, there is a marked reduction in beta globin chain synthesis. That is why the patient's hemoglobin is very low. That is why, how will the patient present? Severe pallor or hepatosplenomegaly. Now, the key words in the MCQ exam, students, are history of repeated blood transfusion. My patient cannot survive without any blood transfusion. You know, those small children, they come to us and they have severe pallor and they cannot sustain themselves if I do not transfuse blood to them. That is why in the exam, you can be given a history of repeated blood transfusion, or there can be chipmunk facies. What do we mean by chipmunk facies? In this image, can you see that this child, the faces are a little abnormal? So I can see that there is frontal bossing, which is there. See this frontal bossing, which is there. Then there is flat nasal bridge, which is there. Why do we see these faces? Because of extramedullary hematopoiesis. There is hematopoiesis which starts occurring in the skull bones. Hematopoiesis cannot occur properly in the bone marrow, so it will start occurring in the skull bones. That is why this leads to chipmunk faces, which are also called as thalassemic faces, right? So sometimes this image can also be given to you, and they can be correlated with the history, clinico-pathologic history of the patient, correct? So these are the 2 points which you need to look for in a clinico-pathologic question. Next, if the patient has beta thalassemia minor, the important point is the patient does not respond to iron therapy, right? Students, thalassemia patient has got microcytic hypochromic anemia, right? Now, the most common thing when I see a DD, when I see a slide of microcytic hypochromic anemia in my lab is iron deficiency anemia in a country like India, right? In our country. But when I give iron to that particular patient, the patient does not respond. That's a sign that the patient does not have iron deficiency anemia. That patient has got thalassemia, might have, right? So you start doing the other test for thalassemia, correct? So the other thing which you need to know to differentiate between these thalassemias is the iron profile. Of course, if you give repeatedly blood to the patient, the iron levels will be raised. So in major, the iron levels are increased, right? Whereas in intermediate and minor, they will be normal. A very important investigation which we do for hemoglobinopathies, that is sickle cell anemia or thalassemia, is hemoglobin electrophoresis, right? So when I do electrophoresis or HPLC, this is a very important take-home point because this is asked in a lot of MCQs. That is, in beta thalassemia major, there is increased level of fetal hemoglobin, whereas in beta thalassemia in minor or trait, it is also called as trait, there is raised HbA2 level, correct? So raised HbA2 in minor and raised fetal hemoglobin in thal major, a very important take-home point, correct? You know how to identify chipmunk faces? Next, another image they can give you in a clinical pathologic question from thalassemia is this skull X-ray. Now, if this image is given, can you people identify that in this image, the skull plate shows this something like this? Now, this is called as the crew cut appearance or the hair on end appearance. You know, the army people, they have a crew cut which is there. The haircut is like a crew cut, it is called. So this looks like that cut. That is why this is called as a crew cut appearance or the hair on end appearance, right? Now, why is this appearance? Again, because my bone marrow does not have proper hematopoiesis. So the hematopoiesis starts in the skull bones, right? So this is also due to extramedullary hematopoiesis. And if you are given such an image in the exam, there are only 2 DDs which you think of. One is sickle cell anemia and another is thalassemia, right? So this image, this crew cut appearance is seen in sickle cell anemia or thalassemia, correct? Next. This is a very important thing, image students, I feel in future exams, even for FMG, this image can be asked, that is hemoglobin electrophoresis. A very basic thing. What is electrophoresis? Electrophoresis is the particles, the hemoglobin, various hemoglobins are separated on the basis of the electronic charge and solubility, right? Now, you all know that in normal adults, we all are normal adults. In normal adults, we have 3 kinds of hemoglobins which are there. One is called as adult hemoglobin, and that is alpha 2 beta 2, that is 95 to 97%. That's the most common hemoglobin which we have. We all also have got some amount of fetal hemoglobin, that is alpha 2 gamma 2, that is less than 1%. Whereas HbA2 is also present, that is alpha 2 delta 2, which is approximately 2 to 3.5%. Correct? These are the 3 kinds of hemoglobins which we have, right? Now, when I do electrophoresis, I will, in a normal person, you can appreciate, I'm seeing these 3 bands. So on electrophoresis, what we see is these bands. Because the amount of hemoglobin adult is maximum, that is why it has got the thickest band. Fetal hemoglobin has got the thinnest band, whereas A2 has got a mediocre band, correct? Because A2 is 2 to 3.5%. So that is the electrophoresis of a normal patient, the first image which I'm showing, right? In the image which is given below, I have shown abnormality. That's an abnormal electrophoresis. Why? Because I can see a lot of other bands also in this image, which are not present normally. Normally, there should be just 3 bands, right? For the students, you can remember a mnemonic that is HAFSA. That's the mnemonic which you can remember, that is HAFSA. So from anode to cathode, HAFSA. So here you will see HBH, then adult hemoglobin, then fetal hemoglobin band, then sickle cell hemoglobin band, and after that we have HbA2 band, right? So that's why the mnemonic is HAFSA, remember. So that means nearest to the anode will be H band and farthest from the anode will be HbA2 band. A very, very important concept which you do not understand from books. Please take home this concept from here only, correct? Now let us see the various types of disorders and electrophoresis so that you are able to understand this concept more clearly. In this image, students, can you see this is the normal thing? That's the adult hemoglobin, the thickest band. Then we have fetal, and then we have A2, the 3 bands which are seen in a normal person. I have told you that if a person has beta thalassemia trait, right, which hemoglobin is raised? HbA2, right? The level of A2 is raised. So that is why you can see a thicker band in the A2 region, right? Thicker band. The HbA2 level is approximately 3.5 to 9% in case of beta thalassemia trait. Please remember, that's a take-home point, right? If my patient has got beta thalassemia major, I just told you which hemoglobin rises? Fetal hemoglobin. That is why what I see here is thick band in the fetal hemoglobin region, right? So you understood how a pathologist diagnoses a electrophoresis strip? If my patient has got sickle cell trait, now trait means that my patient will have adult hemoglobin also and sickle cell hemoglobin also. Both the hemoglobins are there. So that is why this patient will have adult hemoglobin. Also, this will have another band in the S region, sickle cell region. So that's HbS, correct? Whereas if my patient has got sickle cell anemia, there will be an extremely thick band in the sickle cell region because more than 90% is sickle cell hemoglobin, right? So that's a very, very important image which I'm predicting can be asked in future FMG exams or even in NEET or AIIMS exams, correct? Then students, we also talk about one other investigation, which is one of the latest investigations which we do to diagnose hemoglobinopathies, that is high performance or high pressure liquid chromatography, right? Why is this investigation superior to electrophoresis? Because what we do, it's a simple machine. We take the patient's blood and we directly get the percentages of various hemoglobins. So suppose I get the percentage of HbA2 is 7%. I directly know that the answer is going to be beta thalassemia minor or beta thalassemia trait, right? So you don't have to interpret the electrophoresis strip. You can directly tell, looking at the various percentages, whether this patient is normal or abnormal. These days, this is considered as one of the best investigations to diagnose various hemoglobinopathies. That's another thing which you need to know, right? Next. Okay, in this image, can we identify that these cells which are there, they're very characteristic. They're not normal RBCs. They have got these certain projections which are there. Blunt projections, irregular projections. These cells are called as Burr cells, right? And these Burr cells are seen in uremia, or chronic renal failure, right? So earlier students, we directly used to get questions, Burr cells are seen in. That was a very common question 3 years back. Now, what they will do, they will give you this image and they will identify what, in which condition will you see this kind of a cell. That's the different thing which has happened in the past 3 years, even for FMG exams, right? In the image below, can you see there are projections in these RBCs also? But these projections are not blunt. They're very sharp spicules. They are very sharp projections, right? These cells are therefore called as acanthocytes, sharp projections which are there, right? And these acanthocytes are seen in which disorder? That is A-beta lipoproteinemia, right? Simple, direct. Next. This is an important image, and I have seen in the past 3 years, this image has been asked in various exams, right? RBC, right? Can you see these bluish dots which are there in these RBCs? What are these bluish dots? This is actually a remnant of nucleus. This is not the nucleus which I see. You all know that RBCs are non-nucleated. There is no nucleus in the RBCs, right? This is actually a remnant of nucleus. A remnant of nucleus was left. This remnant of nucleus is called as the Howell-Jolly bodies. What are these? They are Howell-Jolly bodies. The next question which I will ask you is, Howell-Jolly bodies are seen in which conditions? So they are seen in, the best answer which you are going to mark is asplenia or post-splenectomy. So once there was a question that in a splenectomized individual, what will the peripheral smear show? The answer is a Howell-Jolly body, right? Which is a nuclear remnant. If that's not there in the option, asplenia, the second best answer is going to be either thalassemia, if they're asking about any hemolytic anemias, or it can be even megaloblastic anemias, right? So these are Howell-Jolly bodies. So on various groups, many students have asked me this question that, ma'am, how do we differentiate a Howell-Jolly body from a Pappenheimer body, right? So there are two things how. One, Howell-Jolly body, because it is a remnant of nucleus, it will be always single. Whereas a Pappenheimer body, because there are iron granules seen in sideroblastic anemia, they are going to be multiple. That is one thing which you need to know. The second thing which you need to know here is that Howell-Jolly body, you can also see on Romanovsky stain. Pappenheimer is best visualized on reticulocyte stain or the vital stain, correct? This is how we differentiate this Howell-Jolly from a Pappenheimer body, right? Next, in this image, can you people appreciate these cells which are seen? Now, again, the imagination of a pathologist, they look like a helmet, right? That's why we name them as helmet cells, or the other name are fragmented red cells, because sometimes when these red cells, they surpass a blood vessel, they get fragmented. They're also called fragmented red cells. And the other very glorified name for these cells is a schistocyte, right? So once in the MCQ exam, there was a question of a child with splenomegaly and the patient showing schistocyte, and they asked you about the diagnosis, right? So in which all conditions do you see these schistocytes? They are seen in microangiopathic hemolytic anemias. You'll ask me, what are microangiopathic hemolytic anemias? There are three microangiopathic hemolytic anemias which we know of. One is HUS, that is hemolytic uremic syndrome. Then we have TTP, thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura. And then we have DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, correct? So these are microangiopathic hemolytic anemias which show these schistocytes. Another thing, they can also be seen in prosthetic cardiac wall. So a question can be a patient with aortic valve damage, has got an aortic valve replacement done. What will the peripheral smear show? The answer is going to be schistocytes, right? So this is how we identify schistocytes. Okay, this is another spotter which is asked in the exam. In the RBC, what I can see is something which looks like a 8. So we call it as a figure of 8 configuration. This is actually called as a Cabot ring. What is this called? This ring-like structure is called as a Cabot ring. It is actually composed of what? Microtubules, right? So another thing they can ask you is, what is the composition? Cabot ring is composed of microtubules, and it is seen in megaloblastic anemia due to vitamin B12 deficiency or folate deficiency, or it can also be seen in thalassemia. Please remember, right? Then, okay, this is a very, very basic peripheral smear, which we all doctors should know, because even if you take up medicine in future, this peripheral smear can be asked to you, or you will be seeing these peripheral smears very frequently in the clinics. Now, in this image, can you people appreciate that the RBCs do not look normal? The RBCs, some of the RBCs are smaller, like these RBCs, I can see they are smaller, and some have got more than 1/3 pallor. I've told you RBCs have got central 1/3 pallor. They have more than 1/3 pallor, right? So what are these? These are microcytic hypochromic RBCs. Why do I say microcytic? Because they have a smaller size. Why do I say hypochromic? Because their color is not normal. They are hypochromic because they have lost the central 1/3 pallor. A very, very important slide to diagnose. And we, while working in the labs, look at this slide the most frequently. Why? Because in India, iron deficiency anemia is very common, right? So what are the DDs for microcytic hypochromic anemia? Please remember. For that, I've already told you there's a beautiful mnemonic which is there, which is called as SITA, right? S for sideroblastic anemia, I for iron deficiency anemia, T for thalassemia, and A for anemia of chronic diseases, right? So in all these conditions, we see microcytic hypochromic anemia, microcytic hypochromic RBCs, right? So whenever the patient's MCV, MCH will be given as low, the patient will be given as having pallor and the peripheral smear showing microcytic hypochromic anemia. You just have to think about these 4 conditions, right? Then, when my patient has got microcytic hypochromic anemia, I also look for one thing, which is called these cells which are seeing. Can you people appreciate that these cells have got a shape like that of a pencil, right? That is why they are called as pencil cells, right? And these pencil cells are seen in iron deficiency anemia. Although not particularly students, we do not see pencil cells very frequently, or I do not use pencil cell to diagnose iron deficiency anemia very frequently, correct? But as a student, you need to remember that pencil cells are a characteristic feature of iron deficiency anemia, right? Then this image shows another thing which is seen in iron deficiency anemia, that is clinically the patient can show koilonychia. What is koilonychia? Spoon-shaped nails, right? You can see in this picture beautifully spoon-shaped nails. They are depressed, spoon-shaped, right? So in a clinical pathologic question, you can be given both the images, a spoon-shaped nail image plus a peripheral smear. We come to a diagnosis of iron deficiency anemia, correct? Next. Okay, in contrast, in this image, can you people appreciate these cells? Now, these cells, they look bigger as compared to our RBCs. I told you how a normal RBC looks like. Don't you think these cells look bigger? Yes, they look bigger. And another thing which I notice in these cells is there is an absence of central pallor, or the pallor is very less. So they are actually macrovalocytes. They are totally opposite to microcytic hypochromic cells. They are larger cells with not much central pallor. These are called as macrovalocytes. And where will you see macrovalocytes? I've told you a very famous mnemonic that I've told you that there is a very famous only for girls medical college in Delhi, which is very popular amongst the boys. That is Lady Hardinge Medical College, LHMC, right? So where will I see macrocytic RBCs? The mnemonic is LHMC, Lady Hardinge Medical College. L for liver disease, H for hypothyroidism, M for megaloblastic anemia due to B12 or folate deficiency, and C for cytotoxic drugs, right? So if you see such a peripheral smear, you have to think of LHMC, right? When will I clinch the diagnosis that this is megaloblastic anemia due to B12 deficiency? When I see these cells, can you see in this neutrophil, there are not 3 to 5 lobes, right? I told you normal neutrophil has got 3 to 5 lobes, right? This neutrophil has got approximately 8 lobes if you count, right? This is called as a hyper-segmented neutrophil. And when I see a hyper-segmented neutrophil on a PS, I make a diagnosis that this patient most probably has got megaloblastic anemia due to B12 or folate deficiency, right? So whenever the lobes are more than 5, start thinking in your mind that yes, the DD is going to be megaloblastic anemia due to B12 or folate deficiency, right? So macrovalocytes and hypersegmented neutrophils, you know how to identify them. This is a better picture to show to you a hypersegmented neutrophil. You can see how many lobes are there in this neutrophil, right? So this is a better hypersegmented neutrophil for all of you. Next, this image was asked in the this image was asked in the INI-CET exam recently, students. That is, in this image, can you people see there is pigmentation of the knuckles which is there? This exact image was asked in this year's exam, right? This pigmentation of knuckles is indicated of vitamin B12 deficiency anemia, right? So two images which you can see if the patient has got megaloblastic anemia due to B12 deficiency. One, there is pigmentation of the knuckles. Another, macrovalocytes and hypersegmented neutrophils. Two images for iron deficiency anemia. One, there can be koilonychia, that is spoon-shaped nails. The other, microcytic hypochromic RBCs or the presence of pencil cells, right? Next. Okay, this is a spotter which is asked these days in the exam, students, right? It has not been asked till now, but can be asked in the future exam definitely, because we all know that how rampant malaria is in our country, right? So this image in the center, what we see here is the gametocyte of Plasmodium falciparum. It has a banana-like shape or a crescent shape, they say. That's a gametocyte of Plasmodium falciparum. It's a spotter which you need to know, right? Also, another thing from malaria which we need to know are these ring-shaped forms which are seen. They are seen in P. falciparum as well as Plasmodium vivax. In both of them, we see these ring forms which are there, right? So two spotters from malaria which can be asked, either there can be a gametocyte of P. falciparum which will show a crescent shape, or there can be ring forms which are seen in Plasmodium ovale or malaria or falciparum, correct? Next. Okay, this is a very, very important slide. I really feel that this is a very important concept and a slide which is asked in the exams, right? You all can notice that this slide shows not a pinkish color, it is showing some greenish bluish color. So that means this is not Romanowski stain, right? A slide which is stained with a Romanowski stain will show what? It will show a pinkish appearance. Now this slide shows a bluish appearance. So this is actually brilliant cressyl blue or new methylene blue. And what are these two stains? They are called as supravital stains, right? They are supravital stains. And what do I stain with these stains? I stain reticulocytes. The next question that pops out is, what are reticulocytes? So reticulocytes are immediate precursors of RBCs. You all know when we have the RBC series, the immediate precursor of RBC is a reticulocyte, right? So when I have these reticulocytes, what I am seeing in this, can you people appreciate this bluish meshwork which is there inside? This bluish meshwork is actually either the RNA or the histones which get stained. You all know that RBCs are non-nucleated, right? But this meshwork appears in a reticulocyte. So these cells which I see here, they are mature RBCs, and these cells are the reticulocytes. Now, a lot of questions can come up from these reticulocytes. One, they are immediate precursors of RBCs. Second, what is the normal retic count? It is 0.5 to 1.5%. In this image, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can see a lot of reticulocytes which are there, right? So that means the patient has some abnormality, right? What is this special stain used for reticulocyte, it is brilliant crescile blue or neomethylene blue. And these stains are called as vital stains. The next question which comes is, why are these stains called as vital stains? Because they stain the living state of a cell. The cell is stained in the living state. That is why they are called as reticulocytes. That is why the stain is called as a vital stain, right? Next question. In which all conditions will you see increased retic count, and in which all conditions do we see decreased retic count? That's another very, very important thing. So raised retic count, also called as reticulocytosis, is seen in hemolytic anemia, right? So for a pathologist, a very important indicator to diagnose a case of hemolytic anemia is raised retic count, right? So even in the MCQ exam, students, please focus on the history. If the retic count is raised, one DD always think about is hemolytic anemia. It's going to be a hemolytic anemia, right? Or in other conditions, in which all other conditions retic can be raised, it can be acute blood loss or as a response to treatment on iron or B12 deficiency anemia. Suppose my patient has got iron deficiency anemia and I have put my patient on iron therapy, right? The question which they ask you is, what is the first indicator which you will do to see whether my patient is responding to treatment or not? It is usually we get the retic count done because it start rising in 5 to 7 days, right? So that's one of the first indicators to increase after iron or B12 therapy. So that's an important point. That is what we do in the clinics, right? Then decreased retic count, reticulocytopenia. Obviously, whenever the bone marrow will get suppressed, the retic count will get reduced. So it can be aplastic anemia, right? So this image, very, very important future question, can definitely be asked in the exam. And on this topic of reticulocytes, there are approximately 6 to 7 questions, which we have already discussed, right? Then on the special stain, that is brilliant crescile blue or neomethylene blue or the vital stain, what else I can see? Can you see in this image these bluish dots? And if you have played golf, don't you think they look like a golf ball? A golf ball, if you people have seen, it's like pitted, right? So these bluish dots, they look like pits of a golf ball. These are called as golf ball inclusions, and they are called as HBH inclusions. They are actually seen in alpha thalassemia. Which alpha thalassemia? Which is due to 3 alpha gene deletions, right? If 3 alpha genes are deleted, it leads to HBH disease, and that will show HBH inclusions, which are golf ball inclusions, right? Next. In this image, on the right side, what I can see, on the right side, I can see a normal bone marrow biopsy. You can see fat, and you can see this is the cellular focus. On the left side, on the other hand, can you people appreciate that there is a lot of fat? There is very less cells, right? Then the amount of cellularity is decreased. When will that happen? That will happen if my patient has got aplastic anemia. The patient is not producing any cells, so there will be nothing in the bone marrow. And that space which had to be filled by cells is now filled up by fat, right? So that is how we diagnose a case of aplastic anemia. On the right side, a normal bone marrow biopsy. On the left side, I can see a lot of fat, right? What are the other clues which can be there? In a clinicopathologic question in the exams, if the patient has aplastic anemia, look at the history in the patient. If there is a history of any cytotoxic drugs or certain viral infections like parvovirus B19, right? Think about this. Then the peripheral smear will show pancytopenia. The TLC will show pancytopenia. The bone marrow aspirate, if I do, it will show a dry tap. In some time, I will tell you how to identify bone marrow needles, what is a dry tap. Please wait for some time, right? The bone marrow biopsy will show decreased cellularity and increased fat, as I can see in this image, right? So this is how we identify aplastic anemia. Next. Okay, this is one of my favorite images, students, because I always predict that this image can be asked in your exams. It is one of the most important images in hematology, which you should know, and that is of a Reed-Sternberg cell. This has been asked a lot of times previously also, a Reed-Sternberg cell. Can you people see that this cell is a binucleate cell? You can see two nucleus and there are prominent eosinophilic macronucleoli. The nucleoli are pink in color and quite big, huge nucleoli, right? So that is a binucleate prominent eosinophilic macronucleoli. That's a spotter for all of you. That's a Reed-Sternberg cell. So many times what the examiner has done in a clinicopathologic MCQ, maybe a 40-year-old woman with lymphadenopathy, and the peripheral smear, the bone marrow, the lymph node biopsy has been given to you. What is the most likely diagnosis, right? So this image has been asked a lot of times. That's a Reed-Sternberg cell. And because if you look very carefully, because this looks like a owl's eye, that is why this is called as a owl's eye appearance. This is called as a owl's eye appearance, right? Please remember. And take home point from here, another thing is that these cells are CD15, CD30 positive most of the time. What are the markers for RSL? CD15, CD30 positive. Now, there are certain variants of Reed-Sternberg cells which are also present, right? For example, in this image, can you people see that there is a clear space around this RS cell? You can see a binucleate cell, prominent nucleoli, but there is a clear space around that cell. That is called as a lacunar RS cell. What do you mean by lacuna in English language? Lacuna means a clear space or a halo. So here I can see a clear space around the cell. That's why it is called as a lacunar Reed-Sternberg cell. One point to take home from here, which is a direct MCQ, lacunar RS cell is seen in which type of Hodgkin's lymphoma? It is seen in nodular sclerosis Hodgkin's lymphoma, right? Nodular sclerosis Hodgkin's lymphoma. Next. Okay, in this image, can you people see that this cell on lymph node biopsy in the center, it looks like a popcorn, right? I always tell, it's my favorite thing story to tell the students that, we pathologists, we are very foodie. We are very fond of food items, right? So whenever I see a slide, I start imagining various food items in my mind. Maybe a fried egg or a popcorn, right? Or an onion skin, right? So in this image, can you people see that this looks like a popcorn? That's why it has been named as a popcorn cell, right? And where the other name for this cell is a lymphohistiocytic cell or a LNH cell, right? 2 points to take home regarding a popcorn cell, although I don't think the image will be asked to all of you, but then also this image is not going to be asked, but then also what take home points you need to know are, it is seen in which type of Hodgkin's lymphoma? It is seen in lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin's lymphoma 1. The other thing which you need to know is what are the markers for this? The markers are CD20 positive, 45 positive, and epithelial membrane antigen positive. Now this lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin's lymphoma is actually a non-classical type of Hodgkin's lymphoma. And why is it called as non-classical? Because it is not CD15-30 positive, the RS cell. It is CD20 positive, 45 positive, or epithelial membrane antigen positive, right? So in short, if I concise for all of you, what are the various types of Reed-Sternberg cells? This is a classical RS cell, binucleate prominent nuclei. There's another variant which we see, which is called as a mononuclear variant. Why is it called mononuclear? Because it has a single nucleus. This with the clear space is the lacunar variant, and this popcorn shaped is the popcorn cell or the LNH cell, right? Next. This slide also has been asked in the AIIMS exam a lot of times, and I'm predicting in future FMG, in a clinical pathologic question, this image can be asked, right? This slide, this lymph node biopsy shows something which is called as a starry sky appearance, right? Again, the imagination and the observation of a pathologist. See students, can you see these bluish, purplish background which is there? This purplish background is actually the lymphocytes which I can see, right? Now these lymphocytes form the sky of the starry sky appearance. And in the center, we can see dispersed are these cells. These are actually macrophages or the histiocytes, right? So basically it looks like stars in the sky. That is why it is called as a starry sky appearance. The bluish lymphocytes are the sky, and the cells which are interspersed in between are the histiocytes are the stars, starry sky appearance. Where do you see this? Burkitt's lymphoma, very important point. What will you, in a clinical-pathologic question, what will be given in the history? There can be a history of a child, African child, with a jaw or a mandibular swelling, because the most common site for this is a jaw or a mandible, right? There can be a history of EBV infection. And a very important point is which translocation is most common. It is T8 is to 14 or CMYC, right? Next. In this image, students, can we appreciate these cells which are there? So they are actually hairy cells. Why? Because can you people appreciate the hair-like projections which are there? Can we appreciate the hair-like projections, right? And the RBCs in this image show something which is called as a rouleau, because they appear like stack of coins. That is why it is called as a rouleau formation, right? And these hairy cells which are seen. So in which condition will you see hairy cells? Hairy cell leukemia. In a history, you can be given massive splenomegaly. The bone marrow aspirate here will show a dry tap. The biopsy will show something which is called as a fried egg appearance or a honeycomb appearance. I'm just going to show you a picture of that. The special stain for hairy cells is trap positivity, and which is the best marker used? Annexin A1, right? These are the other things which can be there. Now this image has been previously asked, can be asked to all of you. This shows a fried egg appearance. See, these cells look like fried eggs. So this is called as a fried egg appearance. In pathology, remember that's a flashcard which is there. Two fried eggs which you have to remember. One, hairy cell leukemia, another oligodendroglioma. So hairy cell leukemia, oligodendroglioma shows a fried egg appearance. Correct? Next. Okay, next, let us see how to diagnose various leukemias on the peripheral smears or the bone marrows. In this image, this is a peripheral smear. Now you can see that this peripheral smear does not consist of any neutrophil, eosinophil, basophil, lymphocyte. Hai? This peripheral smear consists of certain large cells. Now these large cells which I'm seeing here are blasts, right? They are blasts. Now, blasts can be of two types. Either there can be a lymphoblast or there can be a myeloblast. You all know. If there are more than 20% lymphoblasts on the slide, I make a diagnosis that this patient has got ALL. And if there are more than 20% myeloblasts, I make a diagnosis that this patient has AML, right? How will you differentiate? Remember, students, in FMG, last year, 2020, both in June exam and in December exam, there were questions on leukemias, on acute leukemias, AML and ALL. The clinical history was given, image was given, and they asked you the diagnosis, right? So please look at these slides carefully. In this image, can you people appreciate that there are cells? Now, these cells have got scanty cytoplasm. There are no granules which are seen in the cytoplasm. I can't see any granules. The chromatin which I see is very, very coarse, bluish in color. And there are no prominent nucleoli. Even if there are nucleoli, there can be one or two nucleoli, right? Which are okay, which are fine, right? So when you see such an abnormal cell, a large cell, I make a diagnosis that this is a lymphoblast, right? I'll tell you how to differentiate it from a myeloblast. Now, in this image, can you see these cells are larger, again, larger cells? But let us differentiate. They have got a moderate cytoplasm. See how beautifully it is seen, right? Then the granules are present. Lot of granules are present in the cytoplasm, right? Then a very important thing which I see are these prominent nucleoli which are there, right? Prominent nucleoli, conspicuous nucleoli. So I make a diagnosis that these are myeloblasts, right? And they are seen in AML. But remember, students, on morphology, just on the basis of peripheral smear, I do not make a confirmatory diagnosis that this patient has ALL or AML. What is important for me to do is a special stain. If the patient has a lymphoblast, remember, lymphoblasts are PAS positive, whereas myeloblasts are myeloperoxidase or non-specific esterase or Sudan black B positive, correct? Then in this image, we see another thing which is very important, that is OR rods. Very popular question. Also in FMG, it has been asked a lot of times, OR rods. What are these OR rods? When a lot of granules in the myeloblast cytoplasm, they combine with each other, it leads to the formation of these rod-like structures, and they are called as OR rods, right? And a cell which is full of OR rods is called as a Fagot cell. That cell is named as a Fagot cell, correct? A question which is directly asked is, OR rods are seen in? The answer is going to be AML M2, M3, M4, but they are maximally seen in AML M3, that is acute promyelocytic leukemia, correct? Next. So now you know how to differentiate ALL from AML, that is a lymphoblast from a myeloblast. Let us see the next slide. In this slide, can you appreciate this slide, these cells? Now, please remember, students, these cells are not seen in any other thing in hematology. These are actually called as the smudge cells or basket cells or parachute cells. Why are they called as smudge cells? Because, cytoplasm of these cells is very fragile. So when you make a peripheral smear, how do I make a peripheral smear? This is the slide. This is another slide. I just do something like this and make a peripheral smear, right? So when I make a peripheral smear, because the cytoplasm are fragile, it gets smudged. The boundaries get smudged, as you can see in this image. That is why this cell is called as a smudge cell. There was another set of scientists who said that this looks like a basket. So they named it as a basket cell. Another name is called as a parachute cell. Remember, these cells are seen in CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. They are seen in CLL, right? What else will you see are mature lymphocytes. So CLL is not going to show any blast. It's a chronic leukemia. It is going to show lymphocytes, mature lymphocytes, along with smudge cells, right? Next, in CML, when I see the peripheral smear starts looking like a bone marrow. Why? You all know that CML is a myeloproliferative disorder. Because it is a myeloproliferative disorder, myeloid cells are proliferating. So what I will start seeing, the bone marrow is so full of myeloid cells so that these get filled up in the peripheral smear, in the peripheral blood also. So when I see the peripheral smear, I see all stages of myeloid maturation. The cells of myeloid maturation which were not seen, they are also seen along with basophilia. So direct question which they ask you is, basophils are seen in? Answer is CML, right? So in this image, can you see all these sites, promyelocytes, myelocytes, metamyelocytes, band forms? We can see all these cells. So that is what happens in a CML slide, right? So I hope now you know how to differentiate the 4 types of leukemias. ALL, AML will show lymphoblasts and myeloblasts respectively. CLL will show smudge cells and lymphocytes, mature lymphocytes. CML will show basophilia and all stages of myeloid maturation, right? Next, also students, when we do a bone marrow aspirate in case of a CML, what I see is a pseudo Gaucher cell, right? Can you appreciate this cell, right? Do you think that the cytoplasm of this cell appears like a wrinkled tissue paper, right? So this has a wrinkled tissue paper appearance of cytoplasm. That is why it is called as a pseudo Gaucher cell. This is not seen in Gaucher's disease. This is seen in CML. This image is not going to be asked to you, just to complete all the images, right? Next, now in this image, this is a bone marrow biopsy. Can you see these black colored fibers which are there? These black colored fibers are actually reticulin fibers, which are seen in a patient of myelofibrosis, right? The reticulin fibers seen in case of myelofibrosis, right? They are black colored fibers. And what stain do we use? We use the reticulin stain. Anything which is stained with reticulin is black in color. That is why you see these fibers which are black in color. For myelofibrosis, what are the other keywords which you can look for? Massive splenomegaly. The aspirate will show a dry tap. The biopsy will look like this, right? Next, very, very important students, FMG exam last year showed images on this along with clinico-pathologic MCQs. So next topic is going to be multiple myeloma. How do you identify a plasma cell? Very, very important. It's a oval cell, अंडे जैसा, egg-shaped cell, right? So can you people appreciate this is a oval cell? It has got a eccentric nucleus, right? We see that the nucleus is pushed to the periphery. Cartwheel chromatin, as a pathologist, I do not use cartwheel chromatin as a marker, right? What I use very frequently to diagnose that, yes, this is a plasma cell, is a perinuclear HOF or a perinuclear halo. In this image, can we people appreciate that there is an empty space or a halo around it? So that's a perinuclear halo or a perinuclear HOF, which we see in a plasma cell, right? So this is how plasma cell look like in a case of multiple myeloma. Please remember, again, very important FMG questions, right? Then in this image, this is the bone marrow aspirate of multiple myeloma. This image was given in FMG December 2020. What is this? This is a MOT cell or a modular cell. Can you see in this plasma cell, what I can see are these grape-like clusters which are there, right? What are these grape-like clusters? They are actually composed of immunoglobulins. And this cell is called as a MOT cell or a modular cell. MOT means a grape-like cluster, right? So this is another thing which is seen in the aspirate of multiple myeloma. Then what we also see are certain inclusions in the cytoplasm. Can you see these inclusions in the cytoplasm? What are these? These are called as Russell bodies. So another thing which can be others, Russell bodies are seen in multiple myeloma. Here what I see is intranuclear inclusions. You can see inclusions in the nucleus. So what are these? These are Dutcher bodies, right? So what is the aspirate of multiple myeloma going to show? MOT cell, Russell bodies, Dutcher bodies, right? Next, another image from multiple myeloma which can be asked to all of you is that a X-ray skull can be given. Now the X-ray skull of multiple myeloma shows something which is called as a lytic lesions or punched out lesions, right? Whenever an X-ray shows lytic lesions, I can tell you as a pathologist that two things which you have to think of. One is multiple myeloma, another is Ewing. Lytic lesions are also seen in Ewing sarcoma, correct? Then in this image, yes, this is another image which is frequently asked. This is electron microscopy. Whenever you have a black and white image in the MCQ exam, think about this is electron microscopy. That is black and white in color. In this, can you see that this appears like a tennis racket? This thing. So that is why this is called as a tennis racket appearance. And this tennis racket appearance or Burbeck's granules, they are seen in which condition? Langerhans cell histiocytosis or LCH. You see Burbeck's granules or tennis racket appearance, correct? Next. Okay, very, very important image, students. It has been previously asked in all the MCQ exams, right? That is the various bone marrow needles, right? You all know that these days the examiner has a tendency to ask you very, very practical questions. So these are the needles which we use for bone marrow examination in the clinics. So three kinds of needles are used: Salas, Klimas, and Jamshidi. The advantage with these Jamshidi needle is that we can do a biopsy also with that, right? So in bone marrow, we do two procedures. One is the aspirate, another is the biopsy. In aspirate, you will just aspirate the bone marrow. In biopsy, I'll take a piece of bone also, right? So Jamshidi has the advantage that we can take the biopsy also from that. What is the most common site for aspirate or biopsy in adults? It's going to be iliac crest or posterior superior iliac spine. And in children, it is shin of tibia, right? Now, sometimes what happens is that when you do an aspirate, nothing comes out. My needle is completely dry. That condition is called as a dry tap. That is called as a completely dry tap. The needle is dry. In which conditions do you see a dry tap? It's a very, very popular question. We see it in aplastic anemia, myelofibrosis. Why in aplastic anemia? There is nothing in the bone marrow. There is fat, not many cellular foci, right? Myelofibrosis, the bone marrow is full of fibers, so nothing will come out. Hairy cell leukemia, why? Because of myelofibrosis only. And then AML M7, acute megakaryoblast leukemia, why? Because this also shows myelofibrosis, right? Next. This is another practical image very frequently asked in the exam, something called as vacutainers, right? Why are they called vacutainers? You must have seen these tubes in the labs because they have a vacuum When the technician puts a needle inside, it sucks the entire blood. The important take-home point from these is that the cap of the vacutainer indicates that what is there in the vacutainer, right? For example, the red cap, nothing is there, used for serum studies. The yellow cap, there is something, a gel kind of a thing, which is used for, again, serum studies. This purple cap, you must have seen, it's the maximally used in our labs. It contains EDTA. Why do you use EDTA? Because it chelates calcium. And for routine CBC or peripheral smear, or even ESR determination by Wintrobe's method, we use this lavender tube, right? Green cap contains heparin, right? Where do we use? We use it for osmotic fragility or immunophenotyping. Pink cap is actually used in blood banking. The blue cap contains citrate. Another important cap, it contains citrate, again chelates the calcium, and it is used for coagulation studies or ESR by Westergreen's method. So a question which I can make for you is that a patient has come up with coagulation abnormalities. You are the intern. You have to take the patient's blood. Which vacutainer will you pick up? Answer is going to be the blue capped vacutainer, right? Then students, another popularly used cap, gray cap. This contains sodium fluoride. Sodium fluoride will inhibit the enzyme enolase. That is why it is used for blood glucose or blood sugar estimation, right? Last two slides, do not get haywire. We're just about to finish all these slides, right? Next, this is another image which can be asked in your future exams. This is actually a improved Neubauer's chamber. If you have done your pathology in second year nicely, it's a very, very important practical thing which they give you. They give you WBC estimation by Neubauer's chamber. That's a very, very practical thing which they give, right? So what I want to tell you here is that these squares, the 4 squares which are here, in these 4 squares, I count the number of WBCs. And in these red marked squares which are there inside, I count the number of RBCs. And then we multiply them with a dilution factor and then estimate the WBC count and the RBC count, right? What is this? The Neubauer's chamber. Where will you do the count the WBCs? You all know. Where will you count the RBCs? You all know, right? Next. This image was asked in INICET exam last year, students. That's why this is also a very important image. So when you have to charge this Neubauer chamber, when you have to put blood in this Neubauer chamber, how do we do it? We use these 2 kinds of tubes which are there. That's the RBC tube and that's the WBC tube, right? Now the RBC tube, how do you identify? There is a red bead inside. RBC is red, so red bead inside. WBC, there is a white bead inside. Another thing which we use is the markings on the tube. RBC tube will show 0.51 and 101 marking, whereas WBC tube will have 0.51 and 11 markings. These are the markings which are there, right? So these last few slides which I have shown, they are very, very practical. The vacutainers, the bone marrow needles, the Neubauer's chamber, and they are very, very frequently asked in the exams, right? So with this, students, we finish off with all the hematology slides which can be asked in your exams, right? These are the slides which are there. I hope now you can differentiate the various kinds of anemias, leukemias, or the practical things which are there, right? On the basis of the images, right? Lastly, what I would like to just tell you is we have very limited time. So do not waste your time, students. Focus grows, energy flows. So just be focused. Focus is the most important thing. Be focused. Don't just do daydreaming. Start doing. Today is the day. Start from today and keep working hard. That's the only thing I would like to do. That's the only thing which I would like to say. Plus, when you study, build your concepts in a very nice way, because these days now the trend is much more clinico-pathologic and conceptual questions, right? Now I would like to answer whatever doubts which you have. Yes, do not worry. All these images which are there, they will be asked to you. They will be given to you tomorrow in the form of a PDF, right? The causes of macrocytosis. Okay, the causes of macrocytosis, Lady Harding Medical College, a very important, very common mnemonic which is there, right? Okay, I will make a patho quiz surely for all of you. Anything else which you want to know? Thank you so much. I'll finish the session here. Thank you so much for your patient learning. All the best.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ilajan. And it was a great session. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And as ma'am said, that the PDF would be shared by tomorrow day end with all the participants. Thank you so much for again joining. And thank you, Ila ma'am.
Thank you.